It's obnoxious. So there.
Ken, you look like you're in a cave.
I know. I don't know why my lighting's so bad today. It's no different than it has been. Hold on.
You guys are all set now.
Thank you. Maybe that's a little bit better. I've come out of my cave. All right. I gotta figure out how we've got a few discussion items on tap for tonight, and I believe Dawn is going to be leading us through most of these. So
yes.
this is the Dawn meeting, and so do you want to go ahead and start us off with the financial report, please?
I'd be happy to. Let's see. Before you is January 31st financials. As of January 31st, we have obligated or spent $95,700,000 of our $99.9 million appropriation, which is approximately 96%. So far, all areas are trending within budget. On the second page, I just want to bring your attention to some special education information, because we did file, and I believe this was in my last report as well, we did file the first ECR excess cost reimbursement with the state in December. And I just wanted to remind everyone it was 1.5 million less than the December filing of last year. It's mostly caused by three main factors. I had only mentioned two before: lower transportation expense thus far for special education students, and an increase in estimated basic expense from, which is the ceiling that the state sets that we have to spend per child, from $87,000 to an estimated $92,000 before we can submit those expenses to the state. In addition to those, the staff assigned to those students in district are at a lower salary this year than they have been in the past. So it's those three, and they're not utilizing our insurance. So it's total cost of those that support the children, the transportation, and their individual expenses that are added together to come up with what is submitted to the state. We do believe that we will still make the 1.4. Usually the state issues the first reimbursement payment in February, at the end of February. So we should see where we kind of stand when we get that payment as to how close we are.
So just to clarify, the reimbursement rate went up this year, or believed to be go up this year. Is that
the portion that we anticipate receiving on the reimbursement? This last year, I think it was 75 or 77.5 or something. Yep. They're expecting it to be up in the 80s. So we should be receiving more funds, but
82 to 83%.
Yeah, we'll see when we actually get it. But sometimes I get cautious when the state says they're going to do something, and until it's physically in our hands, I want to be cautious on that. But yeah, we're expected to get a little bit more than we normally would have in the past.
Okay.
Transportation is trending on budget at this time. We did have one special education carrier kind of drop all of our students that we used due to COVID situations. And we had to kind of scramble to find another carrier to take these individual students to their outplacements. In doing that, it did cause us to have to pay a little bit more for the transportation than what we were paying with the one carrier that we had. Whether or not we'll be able to get that carrier back up and their students back on with them, I'm not sure. It's up to them as to when they're going to come back and participate by taking our students.
As of right now, I believe they've made the decision that they will not be transporting our students through the end of the year due to COVID related issues. So we're in the position we had to look for another carrier, and unlike our other carriers, we don't have a they don't have a contractual obligation to us.
That's correct.
which
I was going to ask that question.
Yeah.
Is that because their drivers are out sick? Or
I believe they had 12 drivers, a manager, and a dispatcher all get COVID. So they kind of like knocked them out of the park for a little while. And they're just trying to figure things out at this point. I also reported in the past that energy was, electricity was trending over budget, and we have been tracking it, and Joe has been keeping a close eye on it, and we believe that we will have enough budget to cover what our electric will be for the end of the year. So we believe that that will be coming within budget as well. COVID-19 expenses, if you look at the projections, you'll see that on the accounts payable ledger line that we have $830,011.75 spent in unbudgeted COVID expenses. We've encumbered $69,093.76. For a total of $988,105.51. And of this amount, remember, we had a transfer in of $189,888.95. And that was the transfer from the IT lease that we normally would have gone out to lease, the payment for this year's lease, but we didn't lease. We ended up buying those Chromebooks ahead of time before we got the opportunity to do that so that we could get everybody one-to-one back when the buildings closed in March. Food service, we still are in a predicament with that. We are upping our communication out to families. We're still working and meet monthly with the food service workers to keep track of the expenses. At this point, we are seeing that it's a good possibility that the state funds will cover the elementary and the middle school expenses, but the high school expenses, they're not on the program, and so we can't submit any of the meals that are taken by students in that area. So we definitely will have some expense that we're going to have to cover with general fund. We're tracking that on that one line so that we can keep track of all the overages that we have. And we also will be submitting against that line any of the state funds that we receive. So I'll be showing you a little bit of accounting on that once we have that all worked out. In summary, and I need to update the summary on the back, where I have that COVID could possibly be a positive to our budget. That meant that if we were to do full remote at any time, there's a savings in transportation, there's a savings in substitute teachers, a possible savings in substitute teachers that could help our budget. If we don't do full remote and there's more unbudgeted expenditures, then it could negatively affect our budget. So that's kind of like why I have it in both locations. I don't know if there's any specific questions on the financials that anyone has that you see. Those are kind of the highlights.
does anyone have any questions? All right.
Okay, I'll move on to transfers, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
The transfers that you received in your packet, we had one late submission from special education asking us to add to the transfer list. I felt it was they felt it was kind of urgent. So if I got it before you, it could go before the full board on Monday's meeting. So there was an updated sheet that went out. I don't know if you all received that or if you have any questions on that updated sheet. If you want, I can probably attempt to share my screen if you need to see that. Otherwise, I'll walk through them. That works?
Yeah, I think it's okay if you walk through them.
Okay. Music department so far I have the whole top of the sheet is pretty much the high school. The high school's been looking at a lot of their accounts, and they've been juggling some expenses around to accommodate for distance learning and for various needs that they have based on the cohorts that the cohort learning platform that they've been working under. In music, they're looking to transfer $1,899 from their instructional materials music to their equipment music line. And that is for the purchase of bass that was needed for the music program. Their music equipment is usually not they don't usually budget a lot in that line, and they had a need for a bass, so they asked to have that transfer. Transportation music, they're looking to transfer $600 out of transportation and into instructional material, and that's to purchase a subscription to Upbeat for a remote learning experience. In office supplies administration, they're looking to transfer $1,830 to their scheduling materials, and that's needed to purchase adaptive scheduler plugin for PowerSchool. In science, they are asking for $2,852.50 to move from their transportation in the oceanography curriculum to equipment science. And they feel that they're not going to be taking any oceanography transportation field trips this year, but they did have a need for a new ice machine. And in getting that ice machine, they took the money from their transportation. In student life, they're being a little bit proactive and anticipating a possible plan B for graduation. And in doing that, they're asking for $10,000 to be moved from transportation student life to graduation expense. And that's what the high school has. Any specific questions on high school stuff?
A couple. Did you want to talk about the library? I think you skipped over the library.
Oh, I apologize. I did skip over the library. Library has a few requests. They're looking to add additional ebooks and new teaching unit books and other book requests to handle the cohort experience for the students. And in order to do that, they're looking to transfer $1,325.91 from various areas: equipment repair, instructional material, equipment library, and membership library.
What is new teaching unit books? What is that?
It's, let's see if I have more.
So it's not the same, Liz, as like units at an elementary level per se. In concept, I guess it is. So it could be a new science unit or a new math unit, and they want to have books available to kids around that content. I don't know what the backup is, Dawn, but it's
I'm checking to see if I have more detail on it.
it's usually like that type of, the kids are doing a lot of research on social justice, so they need more books related to those units.
Okay, thank you.
Their indication on their sheet says semester 2 always brings new teaching units and therefore new requests. As our need for supplies has diminished this year, we'd like to use these funds for the collections.
The other piece that I know that the high school was struggling with in general was despite the long lines of the book returns last year after March, we didn't get all of them back. I secretly am okay with books staying in someone's house as long as they're reading them, but we didn't get them back. So I know that they did need to purchase additional ones.
I'm sorry, Dawn, I had a question about the ice machine. Did it just break? Is it old?
It was old. It broke a few times. It was repaired 2 or 3 times, and they just felt, okay, this is it. We're not repairing it anymore. We just need a new ice machine. And it's for the whole science department. The ice machine is for all of their needs.
Thank you.
Let's see, for facilities, the next one on the list, facilities has high school building repairs $4,767.05. They're asking to transfer from the Ridgefield High School building repairs to a HAZBAC control system for the high school. And it's needed to cover the exhaust ventilation assessment by the vendor for that system.
Donna, is that $4,800? Is that included in our COVID expenses?
That is not included in our COVID expenses.
Should it be?
I'd have to check with Joe, but it does say due to COVID related. I don't know if that's because we're running it so much that it has to have the assessment, or if it's because of a need to keep the air cleaner. But I'll check with Joe on that.
Okay, I missed all of that. If everyone else is okay, then I'm okay.
I got one question.
Okay.
Ken, you
Did I
froze
cut
again.
out? I'm sorry.
No, Ken froze.
I froze. It was on me.
Okay, sorry.
I have one question if I can.
Sure.
The adaptive scheduler plugin for PowerSchool, A, what is it? And B, is this a subscription or is it a one-time?
I believe it's a subscription. Let me pull that out. I do have more information on that.
While she does that, Sean, my knowledge of the adapter plugin is that on occasion they have an update to their scheduler component and it just adds an extra layer that I think you remember hearing Dr. Greenwood speak about the work that Jarrett and the data analyst up at the high school uses. So that it's not uncommon that happens, that they're adding new plugins that unfortunately we have to pay for. But we'll have them for a significant amount of time. Go ahead, Dawn.
Okay, so from Mike Jagert at the high school, he says this powerful add-on for PowerSchool will allow us to create adaptive schedules for our students and staff. This feature can more easily allow students to be scheduled into remediation and enrichment sessions like extra help sessions, writing conferences, clubs, and other school-related activities. The adaptive scheduler will also allow us to move accurately schedule students into new programs like developmental guidance that require only specific grade levels or cohorts of students to meet periodically throughout the year. The adaptive scheduler will also future-proof our scheduling capabilities as we explore flex time opportunities for students. Most other schools are moving towards a flex time model that allows for a short duration, flexible period in the schedule for enrichment and remediation.
Makes sense.
Moving on. I'll check with Joe on the COVID question on that. I don't know if they needed it because of running it so much that they need an assessment on it, or if it was because of a cleaning the air, which would be more of a COVID concern. For central office, we have a request to move $106,297.72 from the Director of Technology's salary line to management consultants, and then to workers' comp audit, $86,503.60, and that's to cover the IT consultant who had stepped in after the IT director had left. His services are complete with us at this point for a consulting contract. So therefore we are asking to move that money in order to cover that expense. And the workers' comp audit, we always have a workers' comp audit. After the workers' comp audit, we get hit with an additional expense. We were hit with $19,794 to cover the insurance expense after the audit was done. Our insurance goes up for it.
I had a couple questions about that. One, why does it always go up? Or is this insurance carrier not estimating it effectively?
It's based on salaries. They do a salary assessment, and we kind of estimate based on where we think our salaries are, but do that during a budget process, which is like 18 months in advance. We
Right.
really don't know who's going to be hired, who's going to
Sure.
leave, that kind of. So we have an idea, but we don't have the exact. So when they do the actual audit, they run it off of actual at the time they run the audit, which usually puts us over what we had anticipated for the budget.
Okay. And if we hadn't had the space and you know, because of the director of technology salary, where would that money have come from?
Another item line within the general fund budget. Probably another item line within the general services area, which is where it usually comes from. We probably wouldn't get transferred till the end of the year. A lot of times we have a little bit of funds left over in payroll taxes, or we have it in one of the other lines that we have that had come in under, or we would pull it from wherever we could.
Yeah. Or is that something that should be budgeted then? I mean, if we're consistently having
We
to
try
pay,
to, we always try to budget for it. We always try to
Okay.
budget as much as we can. For this year, we know
Just
we have
about
those
this
funds
year.
available because of the changeover in the position.
Okay.
So we were just covering it now.
Sounds good.
And the last one that came in a little bit late, which is probably not on your sheets, but it should be part of the email attachment that you received earlier. The special services area is asking to move $37,000 from the psychologist salary line to tutoring purchase services. And that's because we have a current employee who is a current psychologist who is out on unpaid leave at this time. So her salary is freed up. And in order to have coverage for her, we've gone outside to hire a consultant, a tutoring consultant person to come in. And so we need to cover that salary of the outside person. Okay. Any questions on that?
I think we're good. Do we want to move into COVID?
COVID, moving to COVID. All right, update on COVID. As of February 11th, which is when I pulled the COVID information, and then the payroll is as of January 31st. We've had $1,121,306.20 in the various departments that you see listed there for unbudgeted COVID expenses. Payroll as of the 31st, health office paraeducators is $11,715.99. Building substitutes, $224,785. Custodial overtime, $17,751. And the COVID liaison is $10,789 and change. Total payroll is $265,041.80. On the second page, you'll see that those numbers are broken out based on the categories that what was purchased. So there's supplies, PPE, partitions, HVAC systems, storage containers, outdoor tents, curriculum, technology. And in addition to that, you'll see the salary expenses been brought over, and then food service. One of the questions that was brought up before was, why doesn't the front page total to the back page? And that's the food service is the difference between those two. There's food service is just out by itself. That's $194,567.96 at this time. So total all in COVID unbudgeted expenses is $1,580,915.96. Of that, we have our draws, our transfers, and our other funding sources of $611,683.74, putting us at an uncovered amount of $969,232.22. We still have funds that we can draw down on both of the grants that we have there. And we also have the ESSER 2 grant that we're going to be applying for. And I believe that application process opens up in March. And so hopefully we'll have some more funds that we can offset. On the last page is our estimate as to additional expenses that are anticipated that could possibly happen. Obviously, food services up there, possible PPE, more expenses there, protective supplies, training materials, technology, for $425,000 on that list. One question that had come up last night was, why isn't the additional anticipated salaries there? I didn't put them there because I was showing actuals. I can certainly do that if this committee thinks that that would be helpful to do. Because they will be an expense for the rest of the year. For I won't know. I don't think I should. The custodians will be as what I had originally anticipated, because we're, knock on wood, won't need their Saturdays or their Wednesday cleanings that we had thought at one point we were going to need. But we do know, I do know that the building subs will be through the rest of this year. And then the COVID liaison, as well as the health office paraeducators. So I could definitely add that to that list if you think that would be helpful.
Well, the other items on the list are also estimates.
That's correct. Everything's an estimate.
Oh, right. So I think we should include all of our estimated expenses.
Okay, will do. Any other questions on COVID?
Dawn, I noticed that the grant drawers for this month are a little bit higher than last month. Is there a particular grant that we drew down on in between?
That we have every month, we're able to, any actual expenses that have occurred, we're able to apply and draw down. So each month, as those expenses have occurred, we can draw them down or take the funds in for those particular grants. And so yes, the COVID, the ESSER grant, there wasn't anything more. We still have that 53,000 that's still sitting out there that we anticipate to draw. I believe that invoice will occur in March. So we'll be the next meeting or so, you'll see that money will increase the offset to the expenses. And then the COVID relief fund, that should be finalized. We'll have all that fully drawn down in our February draw or our March draw, one of those. So by the end of March, we'll have both of those fully drawn down.
Thank you.
And then hopefully adding another one.
Any more questions on COVID? All right, should we talk about the student activity account?
I pulled together oh yes, let's do student activity. Sorry, I was moving on to the bank accounts, which is next on my list. I have a draft of my student activity manual, if I could share my screen, if that's okay, to show you how the progress of that so far.
Fine with me. I'm not sure how to let you do that.
I'm gonna give it a shot. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, this is the manual as it stands right now. I haven't put the table of contents in as I'm still working through the body of it. The goal behind my manual is to be able to hand this out to the principals, the custodians of all the student activity accounts, to give them some guidance as to how to best handle their accounts and what our expectations at the business office is. I start with some questions that are normally out there that they ask, or should there be a new individual who's not really familiar with student activity accounts? What is a student activity fund? How can the funds be used? what are possible appropriate sources of student activity funds? What general operating procedures apply to these accounts? Just some things that would be a common question on the student activity area. What are the reporting requirements and responsibilities? So I answered those questions. And then my second area of my manual is the policies that pertain to student activity. I have a few in here: student performance clubs, field trips. Trips is a long one because there's in state and out of state. Gifts to school personnel, solicitation by students, solicitation by staff members, gifts, grants, and bequests, school fundraisers. These are all our current policies that we have in place. Authorization of signature, monies in school buildings, and then school activity funds. We actually have that policy as well. It's very vague. Gate receipts and admissions. I left that in because gate receipts and admissions will still be collected in the new athletic fund financial process going forward. It will probably be kept in the student activity fund somewhere, which is currently where it is collected and held right now. And then I get into introduction, guidelines to student activity fund accounting, the purpose. It kind of repeats the questions that are above. Management and supervision of student activity funds, kind of our expectations on that. An area that talks about surplus funds at the end of the year and how we anticipate those funds to be handled going forward, so we don't end up with a situation like we had with the high school savings account. I'm thinking that there may be a policy that maybe would have to go along with that, but that's something that we'll discuss at a later time when we get to that point. Use of funds, some oversight by what we do here, and the bookkeeper who's responsible for overseeing the activity in the student activity funds, that also works very closely with the custodian of the account, the principals. Responsibilities for student activity funds, reconciliations. It's kind of just accounting, internal controls, our expectations, do's and don'ts. And pretty much that's where my manual has gone. Any specific questions on that? I hope to have this finished in the next month or so. We're pretty much there. I was going to give it out to a couple of the principals to review to see if it is beneficial, if they have questions, if there's something that I can put in there that would make it helpful to them.
It's a lot more clear. Have we run this by Board of Finance? Because I know they're the ones that seem to have a lot of questions on these.
I haven't run it by the Board of Finance. It's an internal operations process for the Board of Ed. So I didn't think that that was appropriate to do.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we can take a look at it
Absolutely.
as the committee and decide if it's clear enough. I mean, if it makes sense to the 4/5 of us, then I think then it should be more clear to the Board of Finance also.
It's a lot more clear than it was.
Yes, for sure.
Great. Let's see if I can come back to you here. Great, thanks. And so that's what I had for an update on student activities. Kind of, it's a manual. We are looking at all of the individual accounts. We're looking at the balances in there. We're having more discussions with the principals. They're looking forward to getting the manual for some guidance. We have the bookkeeper at the high school who oversees the high school student activity and the 2 middle school activities. We have a change that we'd like to implement, but we haven't moved forward with that yet, to try to bring the reconciliation of the elementary student activities more into the business office. Right now it's being, the bank reconciliations are being done at the elementary schools, and then they just forward us the information. We wanted to get our hands around that a little bit more. So there's a few changes internally that we would like to do in order to keep that process clean, keep it accurate, and hopefully help everybody in the process.
Sounds good. Do you want to talk about your bank accounts now?
All right, bank accounts. I put together a little memorandum, and I kind of like, it's been a little while other than the 3 bank accounts that we've been working on, where we kind of were with everything. So I left a lot of the information, what the bank account was, what the sources and uses are, what policies might go with them, just kind of bringing it all together. At the end of each of those accounts is a green section for suggested change to current bank account, which an effective or anticipation timeline for when that will occur. The first bank account is the special revenue donation account. We're leaving the bank account specifically for the deposits of the donations. This is something we discussed in the committee in the past, and moving the athletics out of that fund completely and putting the athletics into a different process, accounting wise, in the business office and in the general fund. We kind of bounced around some of the thoughts on, do we want a new bank account for the agencies and pay to participate, or just leave it in the athletic fund or the student activity fund and track it by journal entry. Something that once we get into that process, we can determine it, whether it's feasible or not feasible, or if the process that we put in place works or doesn't work. Obviously, I think there's going to be some bumps in the road as we go through the whole process, and we may have to change our thoughts on some of the things, but at least we're going to be heading in the right direction on that, I believe.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it makes sense that your initial choice is just guided by what would be the most efficient way for you, for your office to reconcile and monitor the use.
And all of our decisions we also bring to the auditors and to legal, just to make sure that we're not missing anything while we're doing the process and changing things around, and that there's not going to be why did you do that at the end of the day. Yeah, we're just making sure everybody's kept in the communication circle.
Perfect. Communication.
On state grants, there wasn't any changes that we anticipated making, and I don't believe there was any changes to that checking account that we have there. I believe that state grants are received, the money goes in, it's accounted for in a specific ledger account area, and that has been running fine. The balances in that are based off of the usage of those grants and the timing of the usage of the grants. For the old impressed fund is now called the pass-through account. This account activity was left as it was currently being used. The only change was the actual name of the account. We did bounce around a couple of different ideas on possibly changing what activity does go through that account, but I think the account works, the pass-through works for what it's for. And again, timing, the balance on that is really the timing of all the funds that we get back to the town as it passes through that account. Building rental. We have updated the school building rental manual. We've discussed that in this committee before. We are also implementing the new software program, which will be instrumental in maintaining the needs of anyone who wishes to rent our buildings or our fields, as well as the customer documentation of who the customer is, what their billing process is, what our billing process is, what their receipts are, and being able to maintain customer accounts in that fashion. Athletic rentals, athletics used to have a rental process that ran through their area. That is now part of the building rental process. That'll be going forward as of July 1st for athletics. We hope to have the software up and running by June 1st. And At this point, I'm recommending keeping about 50,000 in the account to cover any unexpected expenses that we may have. Keep in mind that we do have to cover salaries for the custodians, and we do have some renters who don't pay rent. So we do have to keep in mind that. Now, whether that's a good amount or not, we can look at that, start at that point, and then process our whole new process through a year and see how we do with that. And then the committee can make a determination whether they feel that's appropriate or not.
Dawn, just while you're on building rental, do you want to talk about the question that came up last night at the Board of Finance, just so that we could publicly clarify the question around the balance, which you just spoke about now, but the actual bills? Because the question that came up last night was, Dawn indicated that we do keep a balance to pay the bills. For example, Eversource, we haven't received the electricity bills. And there was a lot of dialogue back and forth because it didn't quite make sense to us that we still haven't received some of the bills. And so we spoke about how a portion of the bill is obviously allocated towards the building rental, but there's some truth to us not having received the bills for a very long time. Do you want to speak about that? And
Sure, that is correct. The part of the bill that, or the part of the school building rental that we maintain, or I should say, let me step back. What I inherited in the process for the school building rental was there was always about $100,000 that was always kept aside that would be covered by electricity, would cover electricity for the overhead of using the buildings. That amount, my understanding, was derived from the transformer fee of those who rent the buildings. And that's where a portion of electric is processed through building rental, and that transformer fee is what calculated up to approximately 100,000. So there's always been a known $100,000 of collections would always go against electricity, or up to $100,000 of collection. What facilities does is they anticipate that the electric bills, they wait until the end of the fiscal year, and then they anticipate which electric bills will be processed, because we actually process against an actual invoice when we pay it. We don't just take money and throw it somewhere. We process, so we have an accounting process that runs through the accounts payable. It actually gets paid. We know exactly where the money went and how it went through a proper approval process and whatnot. So facilities forwards electric bills to us up to about $100,000 to pay out of school building rental. At the end of this past year, for whatever reason, Eversource had outsourced a portion of their billing experience to a group called the Large Power Billing Group. And mainly they took the 2 schools that have solar energy and outsourced those bills to this group. This group, when COVID hit, started working from home. They had to create a process to be able to work from home. And they got way behind in issuing the bills for the electricity of those 2 schools. So it's 2 schools that we have. We have Scotch Ridge and Barlow Mountain. We knew that those expenses were going to be approximately how much, because we would continue to receive the electric bills for those locations, but that portion of the bill that we didn't receive an actual invoice for would be out there as prior month. And we only pay current month on any of our bills, because it takes a while for sometimes those who are receiving our payment to process it through. If we paid total amount every time, we would be overpaying our vendors. One of our prime vendors for that is our water company. We get those bills for the gallon jugs of water and the waters that would come through, and they're very, very slow. So we only pay what's current. So we do the same thing with electricity. We only pay what's current because it takes them a while to process our payment. So we knew how much we were going to be, and it was a little less than 100,000 for the whole month, but it was 3 months worth of electricity for those 2 areas that we did not receive invoices for. We could track that amount because we could watch to see how much was in the previous amount. We knew eventually they would be coming. The facilities did maintain constant contact with Eversource and said, we didn't receive our bills, we didn't receive our bills, we didn't receive our bills. And they said, please don't worry about it. It's a new group. They're working on it. You'll get it. Those bills actually showed up yesterday. So we have them. So we didn't really have them, but we knew how much we were going to do. And then the whole school building rental is off of the transformer fee portion of it. So we know that it's approximately around 100,000. So the bills that we're going to be processing against the balance that's in there is approximately $60,000, $70,000 for these bills that we have. So
And
that's kind of like,
Those bills are outstanding from April. Is that right?
they've been
Dawn?
outstanding since April.
So I just wanted to clarify that because there was some confusion yesterday because it didn't seem like it made sense that the bills hadn't come because other Eversource bills do come, but now we have clarification on that. Thank you, Dawn.
You're welcome. Moving on, school lunch program. School lunch program has 2 accounts. It has a school lunch program account, which is the main account that we process all of the invoices through. And also, so we have funds coming in from students, but we also have expenses going out for the Chartwells, our food service provider. And then we also have the school lunch credit card account. We didn't feel that there was any need, and I believe this committee agreed that there wasn't any need to change any of the activity or those accounts as they're currently being handled. As well as adult education, that account seemed to be fine and functioning in a proper way that all agreed. So there was no change to that account. Summer learning was along the same line, very small account that we have for summer learning. There is one. Then we get into student activities. Student activities. The high school savings account was closed and movement of funds within the student activity account is underway to account for the closing of the savings account and movement of money into one account for the checking account. If you remember, there was a checking account and a savings account that made up all of the student activity funds that were in there. We've been working with the principal and the bookkeeper to identify what they feel are funds that don't necessarily need to be maintained in a separate account at this point and can be moved into what we're calling the school-wide account so that the principal can go forward with the projects that he's brought before this board, to the committee and the board before, to use up those funds. The board did approve a donation of $140,000 from the high school student activity account for the mobile studio and video production activity area for the students. So that project will be underway once we have all of those transfers complete and they're comfortable with what accounts are left in there. And then obviously the student activity manual is the other area that we've been working on for student activities. Any specific questions on bank accounts on that?
Anyone? I think we're good, Dawn. Thank you. And that hits all the items on our agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn? All right, Rachel, second. Liz, all in favor? All right, that's all 4. Thank you very much, everybody.